The first thing I understood was that my son's casket was too small. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team of the channel Revenge Sins, inspired by real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotion, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. I didn't remember walking up to it. I only remembered my hands shaking so hard that Sylvia Donovan had to lace her fingers through mine to keep me from falling apart in front of everyone. "Breathe with me," she whispered, close enough that I could hear her voice even when my head went loud. I tried. My throat wouldn't open. On my other side, Edward Donovan stood like a wall, quiet, steady, the kind of man who didn't waste words, but somehow made you feel less alone just by staying. Owen's grandfather, my ex-husband's father, the person I never imagined I'd need more than my own parents. The minister said my son's name, Owen Donovan, and my knees dipped like the sound had weight. Sylvia squeezed my hand. "You don't have to be strong. You just have to be here." I wanted my mother to say that. I wanted my father to clear his throat and step forward and act like he knew how to love me when I was broken. I wanted my sister to look at Owen's picture and stop thinking the world was a stage built for her. But when I turned my head, there was only empty space where they should have been. Edward followed my gaze. He didn't pretend not to notice. "They're not coming," he said quietly. I swallowed, and my mouth tasted like metal. They said traffic. Sylvia's hand tightened. "Claire, it's fine," I said. "Too fast. It's just today is hard for everyone." Edward's jaw flexed. "Hard doesn't make you miss a funeral." The words hit like a slap. Not because they were cruel, but because they were true. A woman from Owen's school stepped closer, her eyes red. "Ms. Donovan." I brought the card from his class. I nodded and took it like it might shatter. My voice didn't work, so Sylvia said, "Thank you," for me, soft, sincere, the way a mother should. Someone behind me sniffed. Someone else murmured Owen's name. And still no footsteps from my family. No rushed apologies. No hurried hug, pretending they were late when really they had made a choice. My pocket buzzed. I didn't want to look. I told myself I wouldn't. I told myself that if it was my mom, she'd finally say the right thing. Sylvia felt the movement anyway. "Don't," she whispered. But my body moved on its own. I pulled out my phone and the screen lit up with my sister's face before I even opened anything because the last time I'd checked, she'd been posting about her best week ever. A story loaded, bright lights, a banner, laughing. Vanessa Cross, my sister holding up her left hand like it was a trophy. My mother leaned into the frame, smiling wide, my father's arm around both of them. The caption read, "Family First." I didn't make a sound. My chest just collapsed inward, like it had finally accepted there was nothing left to hold. Edward leaned in, just enough to see. His eyes hardened. "Put it away," he said, and there was something in his voice that made it an order, not a suggestion. Sylvia's breath caught. "Oh, Claire." "No." I stared until my vision blurred. Not from tears, those were constant now, but from the disbelief that still kept trying to survive inside me. A teenager from the neighborhood stepped forward, awkward in her black dress. "Mrs. Donovan." Owen used to wave at me every morning. "I'm really sorry. Thank you." I managed, the words scraping out like they had to force their way through grief. Sylvia brushed my knuckles with her thumb. "He was loved," she said, "by the people who showed up." Edward didn't soften. "And you're going to remember who didn't." I wanted to argue with him. I wanted to defend them out of habit, like I always did, but the phone in my hand felt heavier than the earth waiting beneath the casket. When it buzzed again, I didn't want to see it. I still did. "Mom, we need to talk tomorrow. Bring the trust paperwork." My stomach turned cold so fast I almost swayed. Sylvia saw my face change. What is it? I held the phone out. My fingers wouldn't stop trembling. And I hated that even now. Even here. My body was the one betraying me. She read the message once. Then again. Her lips parted like she had something gentle ready. But it never came. Her voice turned sharp in a way I'd never heard from her. "They're doing this now," she said. Edward's eyes narrowed. "After they skipped this," he said, nodding toward Owen's casket. I pressed the screen dark, like I could erase the words by refusing to look at them. My voice came out small. "I haven't even buried him yet." Edward leaned closer, just enough that only I could hear. "Listen to me, Claire. You don't give them anything, not a signature, not a document, not a single inch." Sylvia's hand slid up to my shoulder, anchoring me. "We're here," she said, "all the way through. If you're listening and you've ever been the one standing alone in the worst moment of your life, tell me in the comments just a few words what you wish someone had said to you. I didn't know I needed that kind of voice until today." The cemetery worker approached, clearing his throat gently. "Mrs. Donovan, when you're ready." I looked at Owen's casket again. My son, my whole heart, and somewhere behind the ache, something unfamiliar began to take shape. Not peace, not strength, just a thin, steady line of resolve that refused to break. People like to talk about bravery like it's a switch you flip when something terrible happens. The truth is, uglier. Bravery looks a lot like exhaustion that never gets a chance to turn into fear. Owen got sick 14 months before the funeral. The doctor didn't soften it. "This isn't something we can fix quickly," he said, hands folded like he was bracing for an argument. "We manage it. We watch. We wait." I nodded like I understood. I didn't. All I heard was time slipping away in increments I couldn't control. That night, I called my mother from the hospital hallway. "They think it's a rare blood disorder." She sighed, the sound tight with impatience. "Claire, kids get sick. Don't spiral. I'm not spiraling," I said. "I'm asking you to come. We'll see," she replied. "Your father has meetings." They never came. By the third week, I stopped going home. I slept in a chair next to Owen's bed. My arm curved around him like I could keep his body from failing by sheer proximity. I learned how to read lab results before nurses finished explaining them. I memorized medication schedules. I learned which doctors listened and which ones needed to be challenged. One night, after a transfusion left Owen shaking, a nurse pulled me aside. "You should go home," she said gently. "Get some rest." "I will when he does," I replied, without looking at her. That was the first time Sylvia Donovan showed up unannounced. She walked in carrying a thermos and didn't ask permission to sit. "I brought soup," she said. "You're not eating." I wanted to tell her I was fine. I didn't have the energy. From then on, she and Edward Donovan rotated visits. Sometimes together, sometimes alone. Edward never hovered. He sat quietly and talked to Owen about baseball scores and bad movies. Like nothing had changed. Like the world wasn't tilting under our feet. My sister, Vanessa, sent one text, "Thinking of you." I replied with updates she never answered. When the immunotherapy failed, I called my father. "They're transferring Owen to another hospital." He paused. "Is that really necessary?" I stared at the wall until it blurred. "Yes." "Well," he said carefully, "don't let them scare you into drastic decisions." Drastic? As if watching my son fade wasn't already that. The bills came in waves. Insurance approvals turned into arguments. I left my job quietly, without drama, because there was no version of my life where a paycheck mattered more than Owen breathing through the night. One afternoon, I found Owen tracing superheroes on scrap paper. "When I get better," he said, "I'll help kids like me." "You already are," I told him. He smiled like he believed it. That night, Edward caught me crying in the stairwell. "You don't have to do this alone," he said. "I already am," I replied. He didn't argue. He just stayed. By the time the doctors started using words like uncertain and progressive, I understood something clearly. I wasn't fighting an illness by myself. I was choosing my son, while everyone else chose distance. Matthew and I didn't end our marriage with shouting or slammed doors. It ended the way things do when two people stop standing in the same place. He called me from Singapore the night the contract became permanent. His voice crackled through the line, thin and delayed. "This changes everything," he said. "For how long?" I asked. 3 years. He replied. Then, softer. "Maybe more." I pressed the phone against my ear and stared at Owen's sleeping face. "He needs you here." "I'm doing this for him," Matthew said. "For you. For security. Security doesn't hold his hand during transfusions." I said. "It doesn't sit up when he can't breathe." There was a long pause. "I can't walk away from this," he said. "Not now." I understood what he meant. I just couldn't accept it. When Owen's diagnosis came, Matthew flew back once. He stood stiffly in the hospital room, like a guest who didn't know where to put his coat. He listened to the doctors, nodded at the numbers, asked practical questions. Then he left again. "Call me after every appointment," he said before boarding his flight. "I want updates. All of them." I did. At first, over time. The calls grew shorter. Time zones swallowed us. Silence became easier than explaining how afraid I was. The divorce papers arrived in an envelope that felt heavier than it should have. We signed without a fight. 6 months before Owen died, Matthew called me late at night. I set something up. He said, "A trust." I closed my eyes. "Why are you talking like this is an ending?" "Because I can't be there," he replied. "And this is how I make sure I still protect him." He explained the details slowly. The amount. The safeguards. My role if the worst happened. "I trust you," he said. "You know what matters." When we hung up, I cried until my chest hurt, not because he had given up, but because he hadn't. He had just chosen a different way to love. The distance didn't break us all at once. It broke us piece by piece, until there was nothing left to hold together. I hadn't slept the night after the funeral. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt the weight of Owen's absence press harder, like my body hadn't caught up to what my mind already knew. The message came just after sunrise. "Mom, we need to talk today. Bring the trust paperwork." I stared at the screen until the words blurred. "No, I'm sorry." "No. How are you holding up?" Just an instruction, delivered with the same tone she used when reminding me to return borrowed dishes. Sylvia was already in the kitchen, moving quietly, trying not to startle me. "You're awake," she said gently. I held up the phone. "This is what they sent." She read it once. Her mouth tightened. "They couldn't wait 1 day." Edward looked up from the table. "They weren't waiting for permission," he said. "They were waiting for leverage." I drove to my parents' house in Brookhaven with my hands clenched tight on the steering wheel. By the time I walked in, everyone was already seated like they'd rehearsed it. My mother, Janet Cross, stood first. "Claire, you look exhausted." "I buried my son yesterday," I said. She flinched, but only briefly. "We all grieve differently." My father, Leonard Cross, gestured toward the folder on the coffee table. "We'll keep this efficient." My sister Vanessa smiled the way she always did when she was about to win something. "We're just trying to help." I didn't sit. Help with what Vanessa slid the folder closer. "The trust. It's a lot of responsibility, and you're not in the right headspace." "I'm his mother," I said. "That's exactly the problem." My mother replied, "You're too emotionally attached." The words landed hard. I opened the folder and my stomach dropped. Printouts, legal summaries, notes in my father's handwriting, dates circled from 9 months earlier. "You've been planning this," I said quietly. Leonard didn't deny it. We prepared for all outcomes. All outcomes, I repeated, including my son dying. Vanessa crossed her legs. Let's not dramatize. I flipped another page. Renovation sketches. Budget estimates. A line item labeled short-term liquidity. This isn't about me, I said. It's about money. My mother's voice sharpened. Lower your voice. Why? I said, meeting her eyes. So you can pretend this is concern. Leonard leaned forward. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to explore guardianship options. The room went cold. You think I'm unfit? I said. We think you're overwhelmed, Vanessa corrected. There's a difference. I closed the folder and pushed it back toward them. I'm not signing anything. My mother sighed. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I stood, my legs shaking but steady enough to carry me to the door. You already did. Behind me. Vanessa's voice followed, light and confident. We'll talk again. This isn't over. I didn't turn around. They didn't wait long to come back. 2 days later, my phone rang while I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a mug I hadn't touched. The name on the screen made my stomach tighten. Claire, my mother said when I answered, her voice careful, practiced. We need to continue our conversation. There's nothing to continue. I replied. There is. My father cut in. Already on speaker. You walked out before we could explain things properly. I heard enough. I said. Vanessa's voice slid in smoothly. You heard emotions, not solutions. I closed my eyes. Say what you actually mean. A pause. Then my mother spoke. We're worried about you. Because I won't give you control. I said. Because you're not thinking clearly, she replied. You're grieving. I will be grieving for the rest of my life. I said. That doesn't make me incapable. My father exhaled, slow and deliberate. Claire, this isn't an accusation. It's a precaution. Against what? I asked. Against decisions made out of pain. Vanessa said, the trust is substantial, more than $600,000. That kind of responsibility requires stability. I laughed once, sharp and humorless. I kept a child alive for 14 months. I think I can handle paperwork. Vanessa ignored it. We've spoken to an attorney, if necessary. We can petition for temporary guardianship. The word hit harder than anything they'd said before. Guardianship, I repeated. Just until you're well, my mother said quickly. An evaluation, a professional opinion. So, you want a stranger to decide if I'm allowed to live my own life? I said. My father's tone hardened. Don't be dramatic. I buried my son. I said, you skipped the funeral. Silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable. Then Vanessa spoke, quieter now. You're pushing us into this. No, I said. You're threatening me because I said no. That was when I noticed another name on the call. Rachel Stein. Rachel, I said. You're there. She hesitated. I just want what's best for you. You haven't said a word since this started. I replied. Not once. I didn't want to take sides, she said softly. I swallowed. You already did. My mother jumped in. Claire, listen to yourself. You're angry. This is exactly why we're concerned. I stood up, pacing. You're not concerned about me. You're concerned about access. That's unfair. My father snapped. Then drop it, I said. Right now. Vanessa sighed. We can't. The word settled between us. Final and heavy. I'm not signing anything, I said. And if you try to take this further, I'll fight you. My mother's voice cooled. For your own good, Claire, we hope you reconsider. I ended the call without replying. My hands were shaking, but beneath the fear was something else clear and unyielding. They had stopped asking. Now they were coming to take. Edward insisted I see a lawyer before my family made the next move. "This isn't about feelings anymore," he said, setting his coffee down with deliberate care. "This is about paper and power." 2 days later, I sat across from Gregory Nash, a probate attorney whose office felt more like a place where problems went to be taken apart, piece by piece. He listened without interrupting while I explained everything: the funeral, the meeting, the threat. When I finished, he folded his hands. "They don't want cooperation," he said. "They want control. So they can't do this." I said, "Right." He didn't rush to reassure me. "The trust your ex-husband created is solid, irrevocable, multiple safeguards. You are the designated residual beneficiary." Relief loosened something in my chest. "But," he continued, "that doesn't mean they won't try another route." I stiffened. "Guardianship." He nodded. "If they convince a judge you're mentally unfit, they don't need the trust changed. They just need you sidelined." Sylvia leaned forward. "She's functioning. She's grieving, not unstable." Nash met her gaze. "Courts don't always know the difference, especially when family presents a united front." Edward spoke for the first time. "Then we don't let them control the narrative." That afternoon, Edward and Sylvia moved into the guest room without asking. They didn't frame it as help. They framed it as presence. "I'll document everything," Sylvia said. "Dates, conversations, who showed up, who didn't." Edward added, "I'll make calls, doctors, nurses, anyone willing to speak honestly." I started gathering my own records, appointment logs, emails with insurance companies, notes I'd taken during late-night research sessions when Owen slept and I couldn't. "This makes you look meticulous," Nash said when I showed him. "Competent." I didn't know I was building a defense. I replied. "You were building a record," he said. "There's a difference." The next day, my mother left a voicemail. Her tone was gentle, almost loving. "Claire, we're worried you're isolating yourself." Vanessa texted an hour later. "We're still family. This doesn't have to get ugly." Nash listened to both messages. "They're laying groundwork." "For what?" I asked. "To paint concern," he replied, "before they paint incapacity." That night, Edward knocked softly on my door. "They're not used to resistance," he said. "They mistake grief for weakness." I sat on the edge of the bed, Owen's drawing spread out in front of me. "I don't feel strong." "You don't have to," Sylvia said from the doorway. "You just have to be clear." The next morning, Nash handed me a checklist. Witnesses, medical professionals, a timeline, and one more thing. He said, "What?" I asked. "Expect betrayal." He replied, "When pressure rises, people reveal where they stand." I nodded, even as something inside me tightened. I had spent 14 months fighting to keep my son alive. Now I was preparing to fight to keep his legacy out of the hands of people who had never once fought for him. The papers arrived on a Tuesday morning, slid under my door like something ashamed of being seen. I recognized my father's handwriting on the envelope before I opened it. Emergency petition for guardianship. My hands went numb as I flipped through the pages. Words like impaired judgment and emotional instability blurred together until one name stopped me cold. Rachel Stein. Her signature sat at the bottom of the affidavit, neat and confident. I called her immediately. "Claire," she said, breathless, like she'd been expecting it. "You testified against me," I said. She hesitated. I told the truth. The truth, I repeated. That I cried in hospital hallways, that I forgot to eat, that I panicked when my son stopped breathing. "You weren't yourself," she said. "I was worried. You were silent when he was alive." I replied, "Now you're loud." Her voice shook. "Your parents said this would protect you. They said it would protect the money," I said, and hung up. An hour later, Gregory Nash called. They filed exactly how we expected, he said. But there's more. My chest tightened. What now? Your sister accessed your son's medical records, he said. Without authorization. I sank into the chair. How? An outdated emergency contact form from an earlier hospital visit, he replied. Selective downloads. Notes taken out of context. They weren't just questioning my grief. They were dissecting it. That afternoon, Vanessa showed up unannounced. I didn't open the door, but I heard her through it. You're making this worse, she called. We could have handled this privately. You filed legal papers, I said through the door. You made it public. Her tone sharpened. Because you won't listen. I listened. I replied. You just didn't like my answer. There was a pause. Then her voice dropped. Cold and precise. Once guardianship is approved, you won't have to worry about any of this anymore. I felt something inside me crack, not loudly, but completely. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the petition spread out in front of me. Rachel's words echoed. My parents' concern played back in my head, rehearsed and convincing. For the first time since Owen died, doubt crept in. Not about them, about myself. Sylvia found me there, staring at nothing. They're trying to make you disappear, she said. I feel like I already am, I whispered. She reached across the table and covered my hands. Then we make sure the court sees you. I nodded slowly, the weight of what was coming settling into my bones. They hadn't just come for the trust. They had come for my right to exist as myself. The courtroom was quiet in the way rooms get when everyone believes the truth is about to be performed, not examined. My parents sat together, hands folded, faces carefully arranged. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, composed, confident. Rachel avoided my eyes entirely. Gregory Nash stood when the judge entered. We're ready. Your Honor, my father's attorney went first. He spoke gently, like he was delivering bad news to a neighbor. Claire Donovan is a grieving mother, he said, but grief has impaired her judgment. She has isolated herself, made erratic decisions, and is emotionally incapable of managing her affairs. My mother dabbed at her eyes. We just want to protect her, she said when she was sworn in. She doesn't see how unstable she's become. I clenched my hands under the table. Rachel took the stand next. Her voice trembled just enough to sound sincere. Claire stopped sleeping. She forgot to eat. She panicked constantly. That was during her son's medical crisis. Gregory said calmly, Did you observe her neglecting him? No, Rachel admitted. She never left his side. Gregory nodded once and turned to the judge. No further questions. Then it was our turn. Gregory called Dr. Helen Morris, Owen's primary specialist. She didn't hesitate. Mrs. Donovan was informed, prepared, and decisive. She asked the right questions. She advocated appropriately. Vanessa shifted in her seat. Next came Edward Donovan. He stood straight, voice steady. My son trusted Claire with everything that mattered. He told us clearly if anything happened. She decides. The judge's pen paused. Gregory looked at me. Mrs. Donovan, please stand. I did. Did you miss any appointments during your son's illness? No, I said. Did you manage his care? Yes. Did you make medical decisions alone? Yes. And did anyone here object at the time? Silence. Gregory turned to the judge. We now address the medical records. A hospital administrator testified briefly. Ms. Vanessa Cross accessed Owen's records using an outdated emergency contact form. The access was unauthorized. Vanessa stood. I was trying to understand what Claire was going through. Gregory's voice sharpened. You extracted notes to support a legal filing. The judge raised a hand. Ms. Cross, sit down. Gregory took a breath. One final exhibit. He played the recording. Vanessa's voice filled the room. clear and unmistakable. Once guardianship is approved, the funds won't be a problem. Claire won't have a say. My mother gasped. My father stared straight ahead. The judge turned off the recording herself. "I've heard enough," she said. "This court finds no evidence of incapacity. What I do see is a coordinated attempt to exploit grief." She looked directly at me. "Mrs. Donovan, endurance is not instability." The gavel came down once. The sound echoed through my chest like permission to breathe again. The ruling didn't come with applause. My parents stood when it was over, instinctively, like they still believed posture could change outcomes. The bailiff stepped between us before my mother could reach me. "Contact is prohibited," the judge said, effective immediately. Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she looked unsure of what came next. Outside the courtroom, Gregory exhaled slowly. The petition was dismissed with prejudice. He said, "They can't file again." Edward nodded once. "Good." Sylvia touched my arm. "Are you all right?" I searched for the answer and found something unexpected. "I can stand," Gregory continued, voice lower. "The trust is secure. No amendments. No interference." "Thank you," I said. He shook his head. "You did the work. I just presented it." Rachel passed us without stopping. She didn't apologize. She didn't need to. Her silence said enough. In the days that followed, offers came. Media inquiries. Advice. People suggesting I turn what happened into something loud and visible. I didn't. Instead, I sat across from Gregory again and slid a single page toward him. "I want part of the trust allocated," I said. "Not in my name." He read it carefully. "Hospital support services," he said. "Temporary housing. Legal guidance for families." "Yes." "Anonymous," he noted. "Yes." Edward smiled faintly. Owen would like that. I didn't correct him. That night, when the house was quiet, I said Owen's name out loud without breaking. Justice had spoken. Now it was my turn to choose what remained. Edward drove. Sylvia sat beside me, her hand resting lightly over mine, like she had learned exactly how much weight I could hold. At the cemetery, no one rushed us. That mattered. I knelt and placed Owen's drawing notebook against the headstone. The edges were worn, the pages filled with uneven superheroes and crooked stars. I didn't let them take it, I said quietly. "Not you. Not what you left behind." Sylvia swallowed. "You kept your word." Edward cleared his throat. "Your mother would be proud of you." I shook my head gently. I didn't do this to be proud. I did it so he wouldn't disappear. The wind shifted. For the first time since the funeral, the silence didn't feel heavy. It felt finished. Before we left, Sylvia squeezed my hand. "There are a lot of people who don't know they're allowed to say no yet." "I know," I said. "If you're listening to this story and something in it feels familiar, if you've ever been told your pain made you weak or your boundaries made you selfish, stay with us. Share your thoughts. Your voice matters more than you think." I stood, brushing dirt from my knees. "They tried to turn your life into money," I whispered. "I turned it into time." Edward opened the car door for me. As we drove away, I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The promise was already kept.